What if the only thing scarier than the price of milk was the person buying it at 3 a.m.? Welcome to the Alabama grocery store night shift, a place where the aisles whisper, the cameras flicker, and not every shopper casts a reflection. Tonight, I'm pulling you deep into the graveyard shift, where reality bends, the rules don't make sense, and every customer could be something else entirely. The fluorescent lights of Patterson's grocery hummed their electric lullaby as I pushed through the employee entrance at 10:47 p.m. My sneakers squeaked against linoleum that had been mopped so many times the pattern had worn down to a dull memory of what it once was. The smell hit me immediately. That peculiar combination of industrial cleaner, rotting produce from the dumpsters out back, and something else I couldn't quite place. Something metallic and old, like pennies left in the rain. I'm Devin, and this was my first night working the graveyard shift at Patterson's, the oldest continuously operating grocery store in Coleman County, Alabama. The building had stood on this corner since 1952, and according to local legend, it was built on top of what used to be a Civil War field hospital. I didn't believe in ghosts or local legends. I believed in paying rent, and the night shift paid $3 more per hour than day shift. That's all the supernatural I needed. My trainer for the evening was supposed to be a guy named Roland, a 20-year veteran of the night shift who the manager described as experienced in a tone that suggested I should read between the lines. He was waiting for me by the customer service desk, a wiry man in his late 50s with gray hair pulled back in a ponytail and eyes that seemed to look through you rather than at you. "You're Devin?" he asked, not bothering with pleasantries. "That's me, ready to learn." He studied me for a long moment, then reached under the counter and pulled out a laminated sheet of paper. "Before we start, you need to read this. Memorize it if you can. These are the rules for night shift." I took the paper, expecting the usual retail protocols, customer service guidelines, security procedures, that sort of thing. What I got instead made me wonder if this was some kind of hazing ritual. Patterson's grocery night shift rules. 1. The store closes at 11 p.m., but the doors don't lock until midnight. Anyone inside before midnight is a customer. Anyone who enters after midnight is not. 2. If a customer asks you what year it is, answer honestly, but do not engage in further conversation. 3. Aisle 7 must be swept every hour between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m., even if it appears clean. 4. If you hear your name called from the walk-in freezer, do not respond. If you hear it 3 times, leave the store immediately. 5. The security cameras in the back office show a 47-second delay. What you see happened 47 seconds ago. Plan accordingly. 6. Never look directly at the customer in the long gray coat. Peripheral vision only. 7. If the automated doors open and close 3 times with no one entering, immediately turn on all lights in the store, including the stockroom. 8. Do not restock the bottom shelf of aisle 3 between midnight and 4 a.m. 9. If a child comes in alone after 2 a.m., call the number on the bulletin board immediately. Do not let them leave. 10. The manager's office door will occasionally open on its own. This is normal. Do not go inside. I looked up at Roland, searching his face for any hint of a smile, any sign this was a joke. His expression remained perfectly neutral. "Is this serious?" I asked. "Deadly. Come on. What year it is? Gray coats. This is someone messing with the new guy, right?" Roland took the paper back and tucked it under the counter. "You'll understand by morning, or you won't come back. Most don't make it past the first week. The ones who do stop asking questions." He gestured toward the sales floor. "Come on, let me show you the registers before we close." The next hour passed in a blur of standard training. How to close out the registers, where the cleaning supplies were kept, the proper procedure for checking and late deliveries. The last customers trickled out around 10:50. And at exactly 11 p.m., Roland locked the front doors. Or rather, he went through the motion of locking them. I watched him turn the key, but something about the gesture felt performative like he knew it wouldn't actually keep anything out. Now what? I asked. Now we wait for midnight. The store transformed in that single hour. With the doors locked and the piped-in music turned off, Patterson's grocery became a cavern of shadows and strange sounds. The refrigeration units groaned and hissed like sleeping beasts. The fluorescent lights flickered in irregular patterns that seemed almost deliberate. And underneath it all, there was that constant hum, not quite mechanical, not quite natural, that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Roland had me start with the basic tasks, facing products, which meant pulling items forward on the shelves to make them look full, mopping the entryway, checking the thermometers and all the coolers. Mundane work that should have been relaxing in its monotony, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. At 11:37, I was in aisle 4, organizing vegetables, when I heard it for the first time. A whisper, soft and insistent, coming from somewhere near the end of the aisle. I couldn't make out words, just the sound of someone speaking urgently under their breath. I walked toward it, my footsteps echoing off the linoleum. The whispering stopped. "Roland," I called out. No response. I turned the corner into aisle 5, the baking supplies aisle, and found it empty. Completely empty. But on the bottom shelf, a bag of flour had split open, and in the fine white powder, I could see what looked like handprints. Small handprints, like a child's. "Don't touch that." I spun around to find Roland standing behind me, his face grave. "What is it?" "Aisle 5 is where the flour spills. It happens every night around this time. Leave it. It'll be gone by morning." He checked his watch. Midnight in 20 minutes. That's when things get interesting. "Roland, what's really going on here?" "Those rules. You think I'm crazy. Everyone does it first." He started walking toward the front of the store, and I followed. Patterson's has been open for 73 years. In that time, 47 employees have worked the night shift. Of those 47, only 6 have stayed longer than a month. I'm one of them. The others. He trailed off, staring at the locked front doors. The others didn't follow the rules. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm Alabama night pressing against the store's windows. What happened to them? Nothing good. Most just disappeared. One went insane, kept screaming about customers with no faces. Another walked into traffic on Highway 278 during morning rush hour, said she needed to go back and fix her mistake. The official story is always substance abuse or mental breakdown. But those of us who work nights, we know better. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn photograph. It showed the store's front entrance, but the image was wrong somehow. The windows reflected not the parking lot, but a dark, tree-lined road that I didn't recognize. Standing in the doorway was a figure in a long gray coat, their face a blur of shadows. "That's Rule 6, Roland said quietly. The customer in the long gray coat. Been coming here since before I started. Never speaks, never buys anything. Just walks the aisles, looking at products. But if you look directly at them, if you make eye contact, you'll see what they really are. And once you see, you can't unsee." Before I could respond, the clock on the wall clicked over to midnight, and the automatic doors, those locked automatic doors, slid open with their familiar electronic chime. Nobody was there. At least, nobody I could see. But the smell that wafted in on the night air made my stomach clench. That same metallic scent I'd noticed when I first arrived, now intensified 100-fold. The smell of old copper. The smell of a slaughterhouse. The smell of something that had been dead for a very long time. Roland's hand gripped my shoulder. "Rule 7, he whispered. "Count the times the door opens." The door's closed. Opened. Closed. Opened. Closed. Opened. 3 times. "All the lights," Roland commanded, already running toward the switch panel. "Turn on every light in the store. Now." I ran, my heart hammering, not understanding, but knowing with absolute certainty that something was terribly wrong. I hit the stockroom first, slapping every switch I could find. The darkness retreated into corners, And for just a moment, just one terrible moment, I saw them. Shapes. Human-shaped, but wrong. Standing in the shadows between the pallets of inventory. Watching me with eyes that reflected the light like an animal's. Then the main floor lights blazed on, and they were gone. Roland appeared in the doorway, breathing hard. Good. You're fast. That's good. You'll need to be fast to survive this shift. He looked at me with something approaching approval. You followed the rule without hesitation. That's rare. Maybe you'll be number 7 after all. Number 7, the 7th employee to make it past a month. He walked past me in the store, and I noticed his hand was shaking. Even after 20 years, this still scared him. Come on, we need to sweep aisle 7 before 1 o'clock. And Devin. Yeah. Welcome to the graveyard shift. It only gets stranger from here. As I followed him back onto the sales floor, I couldn't help but glance at the security monitor behind the customer service desk. The screen showed the store as it had been 47 seconds ago. Roland and me, standing in the stockroom, turning on lights. But in the background, barely visible in the darkness before the lights came on, I could see them clearly on the recording. Dozens of figures, standing perfectly still, all facing toward the camera, all smiling. The clock above the pharmacy counter read 12:47 a.m. when I met my first real customer of the graveyard shift. I was restocking energy drinks in the cooler near the front when the chime sounded. That same electronic tone that had announced the arrival of nothing just 47 minutes earlier. This time, though, someone actually walked through the doors. She was small, maybe 5'2", wearing a floral nightgown and fuzzy pink slippers that scuffed against the linoleum as she shuffled toward the produce section. Her eyes were half closed, and she moved with the uncertain gait of someone navigating a dream. In her hand, she clutched a wadded-up $20 bill. Is she sleepwalking? I whispered to Roland, who had materialized beside me with the unsettling silence he seemed to specialize in. That's Dolores. Comes in 3 times a week, always between midnight and 1. Watch. We observed from a distance as Dolores drifted through the store like a ghost herself. She picked up a watermelon, cradled it like a baby, then set it down and moved to the dairy section. There, she collected 6 containers of cottage cheese, a gallon of chocolate milk, and a package of string cheese. Her eyes never fully opened. Her expression never changed. Should we help her? I asked, uncomfortable watching this vulnerable woman stumble through the aisles. No, never wake a sleepwalker, remember? Besides, Dolores knows exactly what she's doing. She's been doing this for 8 years. Always gets the same things on rotation. Tonight's cottage cheese night. Tuesday will be yogurt. Thursday will be ice cream. Roland leaned against the shelf. She'll pay, bag her own groceries, and drive home. Her daughter confirmed it once. Dolores never remembers coming here, but every morning, there's food in her fridge she doesn't remember buying. That's not possible. She can't drive while sleepwalking. A lot of things aren't possible at Patterson's after midnight. Roland checked his watch. It's almost 1. We need to sweep aisle 7. I wanted to protest, to insist we make sure Dolores got to her car safely. But something in Roland's tone told me that following the rules was more important than what my instinct screamed at me to do. We grabbed a broom and dustpan from the supply closet and headed to aisle 7, the cereal aisle. The moment I stepped into that aisle, the temperature dropped 15 degrees. My breath misted in front of my face, and I could feel goosebumps rising on my arms despite my long-sleeved uniform shirt. Why is it so cold? I asked, my voice coming out quieter than I intended. Rule 3 doesn't say why. It just says sweep every hour between 1 and 5. Roland handed me the broom. You want to start at the far end and work your way back. And Devin, don't stop sweeping until you reach this end of the aisle. No matter what you see or hear. What am I going to see or hear? But Roland had already walked away, leaving me alone in the frigid cereal aisle with a broom and a growing sense of dread. I started sweeping. The bristles scraped against the linoleum in a rhythmic whisper that echoed off the shelves. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary at first. Just boxes of cornflakes and granola staring down at me from their perches. But as I reached the middle of the aisle, I heard it. Footsteps behind me. Small footsteps, like a child's. I kept sweeping, remembering Roland's warning. Don't stop. The footsteps grew closer, accompanied now by a sound that made my blood run cold. A child's laughter, high and sweet, and completely wrong for this place, this time, this situation. Keep sweeping. The pile of dust and debris I was pushing grew larger, though the floor had looked clean when I started. Where's all this dirt coming from? Candy wrappers appeared in my dustpan, brands I didn't recognize. A toy soldier, green plastic worn smooth with age. A single baby tooth, white and perfect. The child's laughter turned to singing. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. My hands shook on the broom handle, but I kept pushing forward, kept sweeping, my eyes locked on the pile of debris in front of me and nothing else. Ashes, ashes. I could feel breath on the back of my neck now. Small puffs of cold air that smelled like dust and formaldehyde, and something sweet that had gone rotten. We all fall down. I reached the end of the aisle and nearly collapsed against the end cap, my heart thundering so hard I thought it might bruise my ribs. When I finally gathered the courage to look behind me, the aisle was empty. Completely empty. The temperature had returned to normal, and the only sound was the eternal hum of the refrigeration units. Roland appeared from around the corner, nodding with approval. Good. You didn't look. That's good. What the hell was that? The children who died in the field hospital. At least, that's what we think. They're the most active in aisle 7. Something about the cereal, maybe, makes them remember being young, being alive. They're harmless as long as you don't acknowledge them. He took the broom from my trembling hands. Come on, you need coffee. The real regulars will be showing up soon. We retreated to the break room, a windowless box painted institutional beige and furnished with a card table and 3 mismatched chairs. Roland poured us both coffee from a pot that looked like it had been brewing since the Reagan administration. How do you do this every night? I asked, wrapping my hands around the chipped mug for warmth. How do you stay sane? Who says I'm sane? Roland smiled for the first time since I'd met him, but it didn't reach his eyes. You get used to it. The fear becomes background noise after a while. And honestly, Devin, the ghosts aren't the worst part of this job. The living customers are much stranger. As if summoned by his words, the door chime sounded again. Roland checked the monitor, the one showing 47 seconds in the past, and his smile widened into something more genuine. Right on time. Come on, I want you to meet Gregory. We returned to the sales floor to find a man standing in the canned goods aisle, staring at a display of tomato sauce with the intensity of someone trying to decode the secrets of the universe. He was tall and thin, probably in his mid-40s, wearing a 3-piece suit that looked like it belonged at a courtroom, not a grocery store at 1:30 in the morning. Gregory, Roland called out. Working late again? The man turned, and I saw his eyes were red-rimmed and exhausted. Roland, good evening. Or morning. Does it matter anymore? Time is such a construct, isn't it? We assign meaning to the rotation of our planet around a burning star, segment our existence in neat little boxes called hours and minutes, and pretend it matters. He picked up a can of tomato sauce. Did you know that the average American eats 31 pounds of tomatoes per year? But how many of us actually think about the tomato? The journey it took from seed to fruit to puree to this can? We're consuming the entire history of agricultural development without a second thought. This is Gregory, Roland said to me in a low voice. He's a defense attorney, works downtown Birmingham, comes here every night around this time to decompress, tends to get philosophical about grocery items. Philosophical is an interesting word, Gregory continued, not seeming to need anyone to respond to him. From the Greek, philosophia, love of wisdom. But what is wisdom? Is it wise to spend 12 hours a day defending people I know are guilty? Is it wise to come to this store every night and contemplate the existential nature of condiments? Or am I simply avoiding going home to an empty house where the silence reminds me of every choice I've made and every person I've failed? He placed the tomato sauce back on the shelf with reverent care and moved to the pasta section, picking up a box of spaghetti. "Noodles," he said softly. "Just flour and eggs, pressed into shapes and dried. But add water and heat, and they transform, become something else entirely. If only people were so simple. If only I could take the broken, the guilty, the lost, and with the right combination of pressure and time, transform them into something good." Does he ever buy anything? I whispered to Roland. Usually leaves with a basket of whatever he was philosophizing about. Last week, he walked out with 14 jars of pickles after a 20-minute monologue about preservation and the human desire to stop decay. Week before that, every variety of rice we carry said something about how each grain represents a life, all pressed together in the bag, indistinguishable yet individual. That's really sad, actually. Most of our regulars are, Roland agreed. The night shift attracts a certain kind of person. The lonely ones, the lost ones, the ones who don't quite fit into daylight society. Out here, after midnight, they can be themselves without judgment. As if to prove his point, the door chimed again, and a new customer entered. This one made my stomach drop. She appeared from nowhere, not through the doors, but simply materializing in aisle 2, as if she'd been standing there all along, and we just hadn't noticed. She wore a vintage dress, something from the 1960s with a full skirt and pearl buttons. Her hair was styled in perfect victory rolls, and her makeup was immaculate. She carried a shopping basket over one arm and moved through the store with practiced efficiency, selecting items from the shelves with quick, decisive motions. "The shadow shopper," Roland breathed. "Haven't seen her in 3 months. Who is she? No idea. She never checks out, never speaks, just fills her basket and disappears. Some of the older employees think she's a ghost from when the store first opened. A housewife from the 1950s, still doing her weekly shopping." He watched her drift from aisle to aisle, her movements so fluid she seemed to glide rather than walk. Others think she's something else, something older that learned to look human and is still practicing. The woman passed within 3 feet of us, and I tried to catch her eye to offer the standard retail greeting. But as she turned her head toward me, I understood why Roland called her shadow. Where her face should have been, there's only a blur, like someone had smudged a photograph before it dried. I could make out the suggestion of features, eyes, nose, mouth, but they refused to resolve into anything concrete. She smiled at me with that blurred mouth, and I felt ice water pour through my veins. Then she was gone, not walking away, just gone. Her basket clattered to the floor, and the items she'd collected spilled across the linoleum. I rushed over to clean them up and froze. Every item in the basket was from brands that no longer existed. Decades-old products and packaging I'd only seen in vintage advertisements. A box of chock-full of nut cereal from 1963. A can of Tab soda. A package of Kugel spread, whatever that was. All of it pristine, as if it had been manufactured yesterday. "Leave it," Roland instructed. "It'll be gone in the morning. It always is." I stood, my legs feeling unsteady. How many regulars are there? Depends on the night. Dolores is consistent. Gregory almost never misses. The shadow shopper is rare. But there are others. Plenty of others. He checked his watch again. The man seemed to live by his watch. It's almost 2. That's when things usually get really interesting. I don't think I can handle more interesting. You can. You will. Because the alternative is leaving. And trust me when I say that once you've worked a night at Patterson's, leaving is more dangerous than staying. The store marks you, brands you as someone who's seen beyond the veil. Out there, he gestured toward the windows and the dark parking lot beyond. You're vulnerable. In here, at least we have the rules. As if the universe wanted to emphasize his point, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my roommate, Jenna. Where are you? Been hearing weird noises outside your door all night. Like scratching. My blood ran cold. I lived on the third floor of an apartment building. There was nothing outside my door except the hallway. Roland saw my expression. The store is a liminal space, a threshold between what is and what was. Working here pulls you partially out of normal reality. Things notice, things follow, but they can't cross the threshold into Patterson's. Here, the rules protect us. Out there, he didn't finish the sentence. The door chimed again. I looked at the monitor, expecting to see who was entering. The screen showed the entrance from 47 seconds ago. Empty, but standing in the doorway, visible only in the peripheral vision of the camera, was a figure in a long gray coat. Rule 6. Don't look directly, Roland reminded me, his voice steady despite the tension I could see in his shoulders. The coat has been here since before I started. 20 years I've worked this shift, and 20 years I've never looked directly at it, never made eye contact, and I intend to keep it that way. The figure stood motionless in the entrance for exactly 47 seconds, then moved. I tracked it using the security monitors, watching its progress through the store in the past, knowing it was somewhere in the present building with us right now. It drifted through aisle 3, the one we weren't supposed to restock the bottom shelf of between midnight and 4, lingered in aisle 7, where I'd just been sweeping, paused in front of the meat department. Then it turned and walked directly toward the break room. Toward us. Stay calm, Roland instructed. Keep your eyes down or to the side. Never direct. Never meet its gaze. The temperature plummeted. My breath came out in thick clouds. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that the thing in the gray coat was standing right outside the break room door. The handle turned slowly, with deliberate intent, and Rule 6 walked in. I kept my eyes locked on the coffee stain on the break room table, my peripheral vision catching only the suggestion of gray fabric and something that might have been fingers but seemed to have too many joints. The smell that accompanied the figure made my eyes water. Decay and formaldehyde, and underneath it all, the sharp chemical smell of old embalming fluid. Roland sat perfectly still beside me, his breathing steady and controlled. Good evening, he said to the air just above the figure's shoulder. Just taking our break. We'll be back on the floor shortly. The gray coat stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. Then, without a sound, it withdrew. The door swung shut behind it, and the temperature slowly returned to normal. I realized I'd been holding my breath and let it out in a shaky exhale. What the hell was that? Told you. Rule 6. Been coming here for 20 years, maybe longer. We don't know what it is, what it wants, or why it's here. We just know that as long as you don't look directly at it, it leaves you alone. Roland drained his coffee and stood. Come on, we've got work to do, and I don't want to be in here if it comes back. The next hour passed in tense, surreal normalcy. We restocked shelves, rotated dairy products, cleaned the bathrooms. Gregory eventually checked out with 6 different types of pasta sauce and a baguette, delivering a departing monologue about how bread was the foundation of civilization and also its greatest tragedy. A trucker stopped in for Red Bull and beef jerky, looking haggard and too tired to notice anything strange. An elderly man bought a single banana at 2:47 a.m. and paid with exact change, counting out pennies with shaking hands. Then, at 3:15 a.m., I experienced my first phantom card. I was walking down aisle 6, the snack aisle, when I heard the distinctive rattle of a shopping cart behind me. I stepped aside to let the customer pass, but no one was there. The cart sat in the middle of the aisle, completely empty, rocking slightly as if someone had just released it. Roland, I called out, my voice echoing through the store. Yeah. The car in aisle 6 it moved on its own. That happens. Check what's in it. I approached cautiously, half expecting something to jump out at me. The cart was empty, just as I'd thought. Except, As I looked closer, I saw scratches on the metal basket, deep gouges that looked like they'd been made by fingernails. And at the bottom of the cart, barely visible, was a smear of something dark that I really hoped was chocolate. Nothing in it, I reported, my voice shakier than I wanted it to be. Look again. Sometimes they hide things. I leaned over the cart and peered underneath the basket. There, taped to the underside of the metal frame, was a photograph. I peeled it off carefully. It showed Patterson's grocery, but not as it was now. The parking lot was full of cars from the 1970s. The sign was different, hand-painted instead of the modern illuminated plastic. And standing in the entrance, clear as day, was the figure in the gray coat, facing the camera directly. I couldn't help myself. My eyes were drawn to its face. It had no eyes, just dark hollows where I should have been. Its mouth was frozen in a smile that split its face too wide, revealing teeth that seemed to go back forever, row after row disappearing into impossible darkness. And in those hollow eye sockets, something moved, something squirmed and writhed like a nest of worms given human shape. Devitt, Roland's voice cracked like a whip. Did you look at the photograph? I couldn't speak. I couldn't look away. The figure in the photo seemed to be looking back at me, seeing me across decades, marking me. Roland grabbed the photo from my hands and tore it to pieces. Damn it. I told you never to look directly. That includes photographs. He gripped my shoulders and forced me to meet his eyes. Listen to me very carefully. For the rest of the night, do not look in any mirrors. Do not look at any reflective surfaces. Do not check the security monitors. Understand. Why? What did I do? You made eye contact with the coat, even through a photograph. That's enough to establish a connection. For the next few hours, it's going to try to find you in reflections. Every mirror, every screen, every puddle of water will show it standing behind you. If you look, if you see it in a reflection and turn around, it'll be able to take you. Take me where? Wherever it came from, wherever it goes between visits. Roland released my shoulders and ran a hand through his gray hair. Nobody who's been taken has ever come back. We need to get you to sunrise. Once the sun comes up, the connection breaks. You'll be safe. Safe? Roland, nothing about this is safe. This is insane. There's a goddamn monster stalking a grocery store. Dead children singing in the cereal aisle. And you're telling me the only protection I have is a list of arbitrary rules. My voice was rising, hysteria creeping in at the edges. I should just leave. I should walk out that door right now and never come back. You can try, Roland said quietly. But the connection is already established. If you leave now, the coat will follow you home. It'll be waiting in your bathroom mirror, in your car's rear view, in every window you pass. At least here, we know the rules. We know how to keep you alive until dawn. I wanted to argue, wanted to insist there had to be another way. But I thought about that text from Jenna, about the scratching outside my door, about how the store seemed to exist in a pocket of reality separate from the rest of the world. Roland was right. Running would just make things worse. Okay, I said, forcing my breathing to steady. Okay, what do I do? Your job. We sweep aisle 7 again in 45 minutes. We keep the store running, and you do not, under any circumstances, look at anything reflective. I'll handle the security monitors. You focus on the tasks that keep you moving, keep you busy. We worked in tense silence, each of us hyper-aware of the other's position in the store. I faced shelves, reorganized products, pushed my mop across floors with my eyes locked on the linoleum. It should have been boring, mind-numbing work. Instead, every moment was torture, knowing that I couldn't look up, couldn't check my reflection in the cooler glass, couldn't even glance at my phone screen for fear of what I might see. At 3:47 a.m., I heard it. Whispers, coming from aisle 3, the aisle we weren't supposed to restock the bottom shelf of. The voices were indistinct, layered over each other like dozens of people speaking at once. But I caught fragments of words. Come look. See yourself. Turn around. I kept walking, kept my eyes straight ahead. But as I passed the end of aisle 3, I saw something in my peripheral vision that made my blood freeze. The bottom shelf was empty, completely empty. No products, no price tags, nothing. Just a dark space that seemed to go back much farther than the shelf should have allowed. And from that darkness, I could hear movement, rustling, scraping sounds like something dragging itself forward. "Don't stop walking," Roland called from somewhere behind me. "Whatever you do, don't acknowledge aisle 3. I forced my legs to keep moving, even as every instinct screamed at me to run. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. "Come closer. We miss you. It's been so long." Then I heard my name, not from the freezer. That was rule 4, and I knew better than to respond to that. This came from aisle 3, from that impossible darkness beneath the bottom shelf. My name, spoken in my mother's voice. My mother, who'd been dead for 6 years. "Devin, honey, why won't you look at me?" I bit my tongue hard enough to taste blood, using the pain to anchor myself to reality. That wasn't my mother. It couldn't be. My mother was buried in Glenwood Cemetery, and whatever was calling to me from that darkness was wearing her voice like a stolen coat. "Devin, please. I'm so cold down here. I need you to help me." Tears streamed down my face, but I kept walking, kept my eyes forward, kept breathing. Why did you leave me alone? Why did you let me die? I turned the corner into aisle 4 and collapsed against the shelves, my whole body shaking. Roland was there in seconds, pressing a bottle of water into my hands. "I know it's hard," he said quietly. "They learn what hurts us most and use it. The darkness beneath the bottom shelf. It's connected to something old, something that fed on the pain and death from the field hospital. It knows your memories. It knows your guilt. How do you deal with it?" I choked out. "How do you come back night after night?" "I think about the 7, Roland said. 7 employees who made it past a month. 7 people who learned to live with the horror. They all went on to do remarkable things. One became a trauma surgeon, said nothing in the ER could shake her after Patterson's. Another started a charity for homeless youth, said the living needed protection from the monsters that hunt them. He helped me to my feet. The store breaks some people, but the ones it doesn't break become stronger than they ever imagined possible. I wiped my eyes and took a shaky breath. What happened to them? The 7. Where are they now? Living their lives. Far away from Coleman County. Far away for night shifts and fluorescent lights and things that whisper from the dark. He checked his watch. It's 4. We need to sweep aisle 7 again, and then we're in the home stretch. Sun comes up at 6:32. 2.5 hours, and you'll have survived your first night. The second sweep of aisle 7 was worse than the first. The children's laughter was louder, more frantic. I could feel small hands tugging at my clothes, cold fingers trying to grab the broom. But I kept sweeping, kept moving forward, and eventually I reached the end of the aisle intact. At 4:23 a.m., we experienced an inventory anomaly. I was restocking the bread shelves when I noticed something odd. There were 2 loaves of a brand called Sunshine Bakery that I didn't recognize. The packaging was pristine, the bread looked fresh, but when I checked the date stamp, it read September 12th, 1987. "Roland, there's bread here from 1987. He came over and examined the loaves, then carefully removed them from the shelf. The store remembers. Sometimes items from the past push through into the present. We take them to the back and dispose of them. Never eat anything with an impossible date. Trust me on that. What happens if you eat it? You end up in the hospital having your stomach pumped while you rave about being trapped in a burning building that hasn't existed for 40 years. He carried the bread toward the back. Stay here. Watch the floor. Yell if anything else appears. Alone on the sales floor, I became acutely aware of how vast and empty the store felt at this hour. The aisles stretched away from me like corridors in a maze, each one disappearing into shadows that the fluorescent lights couldn't quite penetrate. The refrigeration units hummed their constant song, but underneath that mechanical sound, I could hear other things. Footsteps that stopped when I tried to locate them. breathing that came from nowhere and everywhere. The soft rustle of fabric, like someone adjusting their coat. I thought about the security monitors and the 47-second delay. Somewhere in this building, 47 seconds ago, was a version of me standing right where I was now. And somewhere in this building, right now in the present, was the gray coat. My phone buzzed. Another text from Jenna. Devin, seriously, where are you? The scratching is getting worse. It sounds like it's inside the walls now. I'm scared. I type back quickly. Stay in your room. Lock the door. Don't look in any mirrors until sunrise. I'll explain when I get home. Her response was immediate. What the hell is happening? Before I could answer, I heard it. A sound that made every hair on my body stand on end. The automated doors opened. I checked the clock. 4:39 a.m. Well past midnight. Well into that liminal space between closing and dawn. Anyone who entered now was not a customer. Rule 1. The doors closed. Opened. Closed. Just twice this time. Not 3. Different from before. I didn't know if that was better or worse. Roland emerged from the back, his face pale. Did the doors. Twice, I confirmed. 2. That means. He grabbed my arm. Come with me. Now, we need to get to the manager's office. Rule 10. We're not supposed to go in there. Rule 10 says the door opens on its own, and that's normal. This is different. 2 door openings means twin visitors. Means match pairs. Means the mirror walkers have found a way in. He was pulling me toward the back of the store, his grip iron-tight on my wrist. The manager's office is the only room without mirrors, without glass, without any reflective surfaces. It's a dead zone. They can't reach us there. Who can't reach us? We rounded the corner into the administrative hallway, and I got my answer. Standing at the far end of the corridor were 2 figures. They looked exactly alike, twin girls, maybe 8 years old, wearing identical yellow dresses with white collars. Their hair was the same shade of blonde, cut in the same style. Their faces were perfect mirrors of each other, but they were facing away from each other, back to back. And as I watched, they began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, rotating around their shared axis like a twisted music box. And as they spun, I could see that they weren't standing on the floor. They were floating an inch above it, turning in perfect synchronization. Don't let them face you directly, Roland hissed. Don't let both of them see you at once. If they surround you, they can pull you into the space between mirrors, and nobody comes back from there. The twins stopped spinning, and one of them, or both of them, it was impossible to tell, spoke in a voice that echoed as if coming from inside a tunnel. We're looking for the one who looked, the one who saw, the one who made the connection. That's not available, Roland said firmly, positioning himself between me and the twins. The one you seek is under store protection until sunrise. Sunrise is far away, the twins said together, and we are so very patient. We have waited in the glass for so long. It was another hour or 2. They began to spin again, this time moving down the hallway toward us. Roland yanked open the manager's office door and shoved me inside, following close behind and slamming it shut. The office was exactly as he described. No windows, no mirrors, nothing reflective. Just a desk, a filing cabinet, and walls covered in years of paperwork and notices. It smelled like stale coffee and old cigarettes. What are those things? I gasped, my heart hammering. Mirror walkers. They exist in the space between reflections. Usually they can't manifest physically, can only reach through glass and mirrors to take people. But on nights when someone makes a direct connection with the coat, the barriers weaken. They can slip through. Roland pressed his ear against the door. They'll wait out there until sunrise or until we come out. We're safe as long as we stay in here. So we just hide for the next 2 hours. Unless you have a better idea. He slumped against the wall and closed his eyes. I'm sorry, Devin. I should have warned you more clearly about the photograph. Should have checked that cart before you found it. It's not your fault. I'm the idiot who looked. No, you're human. You made a mistake. We all do eventually. He opened his eyes and looked at me with something approaching sympathy. The store tests us, pushes us, tries to break us. Some nights are worse than others. Tonight is a bad one. We sat in silence for a few minutes. The only sound our breathing and the distant hum of the store. Then Roland spoke again, his voice quiet and heavy. I had a family once. Wife, 2 daughters. This was before I started working nights. I was on day shift, regular hours, normal life. Then my youngest, Emma, she got sick. Leukemia. We needed money for treatment, experimental drugs the insurance wouldn't cover. He stared at his hands. The night manager position opened up. $3 more an hour. I took it without thinking twice. Roland. The store got its hooks in me fast. Started showing me things. Made me believe I could use its power to save Emma. There are stories, legends about Pattersons. People who made deals with whatever lives in this place. Traded parts of themselves for miracles. His voice cracked. I tried. God help me. I tried. Spent every night for a month talking to the shadows, begging the gray code, offering the mirror walkers anything they wanted if they'd just heal my daughter. What happened? They said yes. Said they'd cure her. But the price. He wiped his eyes. The price was that I could never leave. Could never quit. 20 years of night shifts, minimum. If I broke the contract, Emma would die within a day, and I'd be taken into the dark places where the things live. I felt my stomach drop. You've been trapped here for 20 years. 18. 2 more to go. And the thing is, Devin, I don't regret it. Emma lived. She's 32 now, married, has 2 kids of her own. She thinks I'm crazy for working nights at a grocery store my whole life. But she's alive because of it. That's what matters. Does she know about any of this? No. Nobody knows except the other night shifters. It's part of the deal. You can't tell people what really happens here. They'll think you're insane, and the store makes sure of it. Try to bring evidence out, and it disappears. Try to tell someone, and you'll sound like a raving lunatic. He checked his watch. It's 5:15. We're past the worst of it now. Another hour and change, and you're free. What about you? What happens when you hit 20 years? I don't know. Maybe I leave and live whatever life I've left. Maybe the store keeps me anyway. Adds another 20 years to my sentence. Maybe I end up like the coat, stuck here forever, becoming one of the things that haunts the aisles. He smiled weakly. I try not to think about it too much. Outside the door, I could hear the twins spinning, their giggles echoing through the hallway. Somewhere in the distance, a cart rattled. The fluorescent lights flickered in their irregular pattern. And beneath it all, that constant hum, the heartbeat of Patterson's grocery, the pulse of something ancient and hungry that had learned to wear the shape of a convenience store. I checked my phone. 5:23 a.m. 1 hour and 9 minutes until sunrise. I could do this. I could survive. I had to. Because I was beginning to understand that this wasn't just a strange job or a weird location. Patterson's grocery was a threshold, a doorway, a thin place where the walls between worlds grew permeable. And whether I liked it or not, I had just crossed that threshold. There was no going back to who I was before I walked through those automatic doors. No return to the simple belief that reality was solid and knowable. I was changed. The question was, could I learn to live with what I become? At 5:47 a.m., Roland finally opened the manager's office door. The hallway was empty. The twins had disappeared, though I could still feel their presence somewhere in the building, waiting and watching. We emerged cautiously, and I was careful to keep my eyes away from any reflective surface as we made our way back to the sales floor. The store felt different in the pre-dawn hours. The shadows were thinner, less aggressive. The hum of the refrigeration units seemed less ominous. Even the fluorescent lights had stopped their manic flickering. It was as if Patterson's grocery itself knew that its time was almost up, that soon the sun would rise and force it back into the mask of normalcy it wore during daylight hours. "We're in the final stretch," Roland said, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Just need to make it to 6:32, and you'll have survived your first night." After sunrise, everything goes back to normal. The weird customers disappear. The rules don't apply. It's just a regular grocery store until 11 p.m. rolls around again. What do we do until then? Wait, watch, and hope nothing else crawls out of the woodwork. He glanced at the security monitor, then quickly looked away. The coat is still here somewhere. It won't leave until sunrise either. But as long as you don't look at it, you should be. The door chime interrupted him. We both froze. The automatic doors had opened, but this time someone actually walked through. Someone very real and very human, or at least appearing that way. He was dressed in full Renaissance festival regalia, doublet, breeches, knee-high boots with buckles, and a cape that swept the floor behind him as he walked. A feathered hat sat at a jaunty angle on his head, and at his side hung an ornate sword that looked expensive and possibly real. He was maybe 30 years old, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes that sparkled with either madness or complete commitment to his character. He swept into the store as if entering a royal court, his cape billowing dramatically behind him. "Good morrow, fine merchants," he declared in a booming voice that carried through every aisle. "I seek provisions for my quest." I looked at Roland, bewildered. Is he serious? "That's the Duke," Roland sighed. "Comes in about once a month. We have no idea if it's a costume or if he actually believes he's nobility from the 1600s. Either way, he pays cash and never causes trouble, so we let him shop." The Duke strode through the aisles with regal bearing, examining products as if he'd never seen such wonders. He picked up a box of Pop-Tarts and studied it with the fascination of someone discovering fire. "Pray tell, what manner of pastry is this?" he asked, holding the box up to the light. "Such wondrous illustrations upon the packaging. Is it enchanted? It's strawberry flavored." I offered, not sure how else to respond. "Strawberry," he exclaimed with delight. "The fruit of kings. I shall take 3 boxes for my journey." He placed them carefully in his basket and moved on to the cereal aisle, where he spent 10 minutes debating the merits of Frosted Flakes versus Lucky Charms, as if choosing between warhorses for battle. "Does he ever break character?" I whispered to Roland. "Never. Not once in all the times I've seen him. He pays with a leather coin purse, counts out bills like they're pieces of gold, and always says fare thee well on his way out." Roland watched the Duke examine a bag of Doritos with intense concentration. "You know what the weird part is?" "That isn't the weird part. The weird part is that he's the most normal thing you'll see tonight. A guy in a costume shopping for groceries is strange, sure, but at least he's human. At least he's alive. Some of the others." He trailed off, his eyes distant. "The others what?" Before Roland could answer, the door chimed again. This time, the woman who entered made the Duke look positively mundane by comparison. She was old, impossibly old, with skin like parchment and hands gnarled with arthritis. She wore a house dress that might have been fashionable in the 1940s and carried a purse that looked like it weighed 20 pounds. But it wasn't her appearance that sent chills down my spine. It was the way she moved, the way she looked around the store as if seeing it for the first time, and the question she asked. "Excuse me, young man," she said to me in a quavering voice. "Do you have any Maxwell House coffee? The kind that comes in the tin?" "We have Maxwell House, but it comes in plastic containers now," I replied, leading her to the coffee aisle. She stared at the modern packaging with confusion bordering on distress. "Plastic? But it's always been in tins. Red tins with a blue label." She picked up a container and turned it over in her hands, as if it might transform into what she remembered. "When did they change it?" "I think that was decades ago, ma'am. Maybe the 70s. Her face crumpled with grief, and for a moment I thought she might cry. "The 70s. But that was just last year. I remember buying it last year. Where are the tins gone?" "Ma'am, it's 2025. The 70s were." 2025? She grabbed my arm with surprising strength, her rheumy eyes suddenly sharp and focused. No, that's not right. It's 1974. It has to be 1974. My husband is waiting for me at home. We're having dinner guests tomorrow night, and I need to make my famous pot roast. I need the coffee for after dinner. Roland appeared at my elbow and gently extracted my arm from her grip. Mrs. Brennan, he said softly, why don't we help you find what you need? You know me. She looked at him with desperate hope. Do you know where my husband is? I can't remember. I left the house to get coffee, but now I can't remember how to get back. The roads are all different. Everything's different. Come sit down for a moment, Roland said, guiding her toward the bench near the customer service desk. Once she was seated, he turned to me and whispered, the time traveler. That's what we call her. Shows up every few months asking for discontinued products, talking about events from 50 years ago like they just happened. Is she just confused? Dementia? Maybe. Probably. But here's the thing. Mrs. Claire Brennan died in 1981. Car accident on Highway 278. There's an obituary. There's a grave marker in Glenwood Cemetery. He kept his voice low, mindful of the old woman who sat on the bench, clutching her heavy purse and murmuring to herself. Either she's a ghost who doesn't know she's dead, or time works differently for some people after midnight at Patterson's. That's impossible. Is it? After everything you've seen tonight, is that really the impossible part? He walked back to Mrs. Brennan and crouched beside her. Clara, I need you to listen to me. Your husband isn't waiting at home. He passed away in 2003. Your children are grown. Your grandchildren have children of their own. You need to let go. She looked at him with eyes full of tears. But I need to make the pot roast. The dinner guests are coming. The dinner party was 50 years ago. Clara, it already happened. It was lovely. Everyone had a wonderful time. But it's over now. You need to move on. I don't understand. A single tear rolled down her weathered cheek. I just want to get coffee. I know. But sometimes people get stuck. Caught between one moment and the next. You've been caught for a long time. Roland took her hand gently. It's okay to let go. It's okay to stop looking for the way home. Mrs. Brennan sat in silence for a long moment, and I watched as something shifted in her expression. The confusion faded, replaced by a terrible, dawning understanding. I died, didn't I? She whispered. In the car. There was ice on the road. I remember now. I died on the way to buy coffee. Yes. Then why am I still here? Why do I keep coming back to this store? I don't know, Roland admitted. Maybe because it's familiar. Maybe because this place exists between things, between life and death, between past and present. Maybe you're not the only one who got stuck. She stood slowly, and as she did, I noticed something extraordinary. She was fading, not dramatically, not like a movie effect, but gradually becoming less substantial, less present. Her edges were blurring, her colors washing out. Will it hurt? She asked. Letting go. I don't think so. I think it'll feel like finally going home. Mrs. Brennan smiled, and for just a moment, I could see who she'd been 50 years ago. A young woman excited about a dinner party, about making pot roast for friends, about a life full of small joys and daily rituals. Then she was gone, simply not there anymore, as if she'd never existed at all. The bench was empty. Her purse had vanished. Even the air where she'd stood seemed lighter, less burdened. What just happened? I breathed. You helped her move on. Sometimes that's all they need. Someone to tell them the truth. To release them from the loop they're stuck in. Roland checked his watch. 6:12, 20 minutes to sunrise. The Duke emerged from the bakery section carrying a basket full of improbable items. Strawberry Pop-Tarts, Doritos, a package of Oreos, 2 boxes of granola bars, and inexplicably, a bottle of dishwashing liquid. He approached the register with the bearing of a man conducting important state business. I shall take my leave now, good sir, he announced, carefully counting out exact change from his leather pouch. My quest awaits, and I must away before the dragon awakes. Have a good day, I said, because what else do you say to someone who thinks they're living in a fantasy novel? And fare thee well to you, brave merchant. May your days be filled with honor and your nights with peace." With a swirl of his cape, he was gone, the automatic doors closing behind him. "At least he's consistent," Roland muttered. The door chimed one final time. I knew before I turned around that this was going to be the worst one yet. Something about the quality of the sound, the way the air pressure in the store suddenly changed, the primal part of my brain that screamed danger. The man who entered looked normal enough at first glance. Average height, average build, wearing jeans and a dark hoodie pulled up over his head. But as he moved through the entrance, I noticed he cast no reflection in the glass doors behind him. The security monitor showed the entrance as it had been 47 seconds ago. Empty. He wasn't registering on the cameras. "The silent stalker," Roland whispered, his hand suddenly gripping my shoulder with bruising force. "Rule 13. There's no Rule 13. There is. We just don't write it down because if people knew about it before their first shift, they'd never come back." His voice was tight with fear, and hearing Roland scared terrified me more than anything else that night. Rule 13. If a customer enters who casts no shadow and appears on no camera, do not acknowledge them. Do not make eye contact. Do not speak to them. Pretend they don't exist. What happens if we don't? They become real. They manifest fully. And once they're fully manifested, they could do anything they want. The silent stalker moved through the store with deliberate purpose. Not shopping, but hunting. His head swiveled from side to side, searching, and I knew, with sickening certainty, that he was searching for me, for the person who'd made the connection with the code, who'd weakened the barriers between worlds. He paused in aisle 3, his hooded head tilted, as if listening. Then he turned and started walking directly toward us. "Don't move," Roland breathed. "Don't even breathe loud." The stalker stopped 3 feet away. I could smell him now. Ozone and burnt metal and something sweetly rotten, like fruit left too long in the sun. Under the shadow of his hood, I caught glimpses of what might have been a face, but it kept shifting, refusing to resolve into anything concrete. He raised one hand, fingers too long, joints bending in wrong directions, and reached toward me. "Ignore him," Roland whispered desperately. "He's not real unless you acknowledge him." The twisted fingers were inches from my face now. I could feel cold radiating from them, could see my breath misting in the air. Every instinct screamed at me to move, to run, to do something. I closed my eyes and thought about Mrs. Brennan, about how she'd been trapped in a loop for decades, about Roland, who'd sold 20 years of his life to save his daughter, about Patterson's grocery and all the people who'd walked these aisles before me, trying to survive until sunrise. The cold touch of those fingers brushed against my cheek, and then impossibly it stopped. I opened my eyes to find the stalker still standing there, but something had changed. He was looking past me now, his attention caught by something else. I followed his eyeless gaze and saw what had distracted him. The gray coat stood at the end of the aisle, and for the first time, it wasn't passive. It wasn't just drifting through the store. It was standing between me and the stalker, and even with my eyes carefully averted, I could sense its posture was protective. The stalker backed away slowly, his hooded head bowing in what looked like deference or fear. Then he turned and walked toward the exit, passing through the closed automatic doors as if they were no more substantial than mist. The coat remained for a moment longer, then drifted away down aisle 7, disappearing into the shadows. Did that thing just protect me? I asked, my voice shaky. "The coat has rules too," Roland said quietly. "Whatever it is, it's been here longer than any of us. Maybe it doesn't want competition. Maybe it was protecting its territory. Or maybe," he paused, "maybe it was protecting you." Before I could process the disturbing thought, sunlight began streaming through the store's front windows. The fluorescent lights seemed to brighten, their flickers smoothing in a steady illumination. The shadows retreated into corners where shadows belonged, and the constant hum that had underlaid Everything all night finally, blessedly, stopped. It was 6:32 a.m. I had survived my first night. The transformation of Patterson's grocery in daylight was both a relief and deeply unsettling. As the morning sun climbed higher, burning away the last vestiges of night, the stores seemed to exhale. The oppressive weight that had pressed down on us for 8 hours lifted like fog under a heat lamp. The aisles that had whispered and breathed and pulsed with malevolent life became nothing more than shelves of products under fluorescent lights. But I couldn't unsee what I'd witnessed, couldn't unknow what I now knew. The day shift started arriving at 6:45 a.m. First came Beth, the assistant manager, a cheerful woman in her 50s who breezed through the entrance humming show tunes. Then Trevor and Amanda, two college kids who work mornings before class, laughing about some party they'd attended. They moved through the store with easy confidence, completely oblivious to the horrors that had stalked these aisles just minutes before. "How was the night?" Beth asked Roland, not really waiting for an answer as she headed to her office. "Anything exciting happen?" "Quiet night," Roland replied smoothly. "Trained Devin here on the basics. Think they'll work out fine." Beth gave me a quick once-over and smiled. "Great. Always good to have reliable night staff. Lord knows it's hard to keep people on that shift." She disappeared into her office, already absorbed in paperwork. I stared at Roland. That's it. That's all she's going to ask. Day shift doesn't see. Can't see. The store keeps its secrets during daylight hours. You could tell her everything that happened tonight, and she'd think you were having a nervous breakdown. He started gathering his things. "Come on, let's clock out, and I'll buy you breakfast. You've earned it." We walked to a diner 3 blocks away, Joe's, a greasy spoon that had probably been serving the same menu since the 1960s. Roland ordered coffee and eggs. I ordered coffee and more coffee, my hands still shaking too badly to contemplate food. "How do you do it?" I asked once we'd settled into a booth by the window. "How do you clock out and just go home, go to sleep, pretend everything's normal?" You don't. Not at first. The first few weeks, you don't sleep much. Every shadow looks like a coat. Every reflection might hide the mirror walkers. You jump at sounds. You start seeing things in your peripheral vision, even during the day. You took a long sip of coffee, but eventually your mind adapts, creates compartments. Patterson's becomes one reality, and the rest of your life becomes another. You learn to keep them separate. Is that healthy? Probably not, but survival. He studied me over the rim of his cup. "You did well tonight, Devin. Better than most. You followed the rules even when they didn't make sense. You kept your head when things got terrifying. That's rare. I don't feel like I did well. I feel like I barely survived. That's what doing well looks like at Patterson's. Survival is success." He set down his cup and leaned forward. "Now you have a choice to make. You can quit. Call the store. Say you're not coming back. No one will blame you. Most people who make it through their first night never return. What happens if I quit? You'll be marked for a while. The things that noticed you last night will remember you. You'll have strange dreams. Maybe see shadows that shouldn't be there. But after a few months, you'll fade from their awareness. You'll become just another person who brushed against the supernatural and walked away. And if I come back," Roland's expression grew serious, "then you're committing, choosing to exist in both worlds. The daylight world where everything makes sense, and the nighttime world where nothing does. The store will get deeper hooks in you with every shift you work. The things that live there will learn your name, your fears, your weaknesses. But you'll also gain something." "What?" "Perspective. Understanding. The knowledge that reality is bigger and stranger than anyone imagines. Some people find that liberating. The mundane problems of everyday life stop mattering so much when you've spent the night protecting yourself from entities that exist outside of normal space and time." He smiled slightly. "And there's the money. Night shift pays well, remember." I thought about my apartment, my student loans, the 3 jobs I'd been juggling before Patterson's. I thought about Mrs. Brennan, trapped in a loop for 50 years. About Roland, who'd sold 2 decades of his life to save his daughter. About the 7 employees who'd survived and gone on to do remarkable things. What happens after a month? I asked. You said 7 people made it past a month. What changes? The store starts to trust you. The rules become more flexible. You begin to understand the patterns, the rhythms. Some of the entities stop seeing you as prey and start seeing you as part of the landscape. Staff, in a weird way. He paused, and you get access to the real list. The real list. The laminated rules I showed you. Those are the basic survival guidelines. But there's another list, locked in the manager's office safe. Rules for interacting with specific entities. Protocols for when things go really wrong. Methods for protecting yourself and others. His voice dropped lower. And information about what Patterson's really is. Why it exists. What happened here to make it this way? Tell me now. Can't. That's part of the rules. You have to earn it. Survive a month. Prove you're committed. And then you get the truth. He finished his coffee and signaled the waitress for a refill. But I'll tell you this much. Patterson's didn't become what it is by accident. Someone made a choice. A long time ago, during the Civil War, someone opened a door that was supposed to stay closed. The grocery store was built on top of that door, either to contain what came through or to harvest it. We're not sure which. A chill ran down my spine despite the warm diner. Harvest it. Think about it. A business that's been open 73 years, never turns a huge profit, but never goes bankrupt. A place that attracts the lost, the dead, the in-between. A threshold where the boundaries are thin. He looked out the window at the brightening Alabama morning. Something feeds on what happens there. Question is whether we're the shepherds or the sheep. We sat in silence for a while, watching early morning traffic pass by. Normal people going to normal jobs, completely unaware that 3 blocks away, a grocery store existed that defied every law of nature and sanity. I envied them, but I also pitied them, because now that I'd seen behind the curtain, the normal world seemed flat, two-dimensional, a stage set with nothing behind it. I'm coming back, I said finally. Roland looked at me with something between approval and sadness. You're sure? No, but I need to understand. I need to know what Patterson's really is. And I hesitated, then pressed on. Mrs. Brennan, you help her move on. If there are others like her, trapped and suffering, someone needs to help them. That's a dangerous mindset, thinking you can save them. Most of the things at Patterson's are beyond saving. They're not lost souls looking for peace. They're predators, parasites, things that were never human to begin with. But some of them are. Some of them are people who got stuck, like Mrs. Brennan, like the children in aisle 7. I met his eyes. You helped her tonight. I saw you. After 20 years of just surviving, you still helped her. So don't tell me it's hopeless. He was quiet for a long moment. You remind me of someone. One of the 7. Her name was Keisha. She lasted 3 years on night shift before she finally left. Started a foundation for missing persons. Said too many people fall through the cracks between worlds and no one notices. She understood that Patterson's is connected to something bigger, a whole network of liminal spaces where people get lost. He smiled sadly. She also said that surviving Patterson's was the loneliest thing she'd ever experienced. That knowing what's real and being unable to share it with anyone was its own kind of prison. Is that how you feel? Like you're in prison? Some days. Other days I feel like a guardian. Like I'm holding the line between the normal world and the chaos that wants to break through. It depends on the night. He slid out of the booth and dropped cash on the table. Come on, I'll drive you home. You need sleep. Real sleep. Not whatever nightmares are waiting for you. The drive back to my apartment was surreal. The morning sun was bright. Traffic was building toward rush hour. And a local radio station played country music interspersed with cheerful advertisements. Everything was aggressively normal, but I kept seeing things in my peripheral vision, shadows that moved wrong, reflections that didn't match their sources, dark shapes between buildings that disappeared when I tried to focus on them. "That'll fade," Roland assured me. "Your senses are heightened right now. Hyper-aware. Give it a few hours and you'll stabilize." He dropped me off in front of my building, and as I climbed the stairs to my third-floor apartment, I felt exhaustion crashing over me like a wave. My legs trembled with each step. My eyes burned. My head felt stuffed with cotton. I fumbled with my keys and finally got the door open. Jenna was asleep on the couch, the TV playing some morning show on low volume. She'd pushed our bookshelf against her bedroom door. I could see it through her open doorway, along with a chair wedged under the handle. I didn't wake her. Instead, I went to my room, avoided looking at my mirror, and collapsed onto my bed fully clothed. Sleep hit me like a freight train. I dreamed of aisles that went on forever, of fluorescent lights that flickered in patterns that spelled out warnings I couldn't quite read, of a figure in a gray coat standing at the end of every corridor, patient and eternal. In the dream, I finally looked at its face, really looked, and saw that it wore my own features, aged and twisted and wrong. It smiled at me with my mouth and said, "Welcome to the family." I woke up screaming at 2:47 p.m., drenched in sweat, my phone buzzing with a text from an unknown number. "You did well last night. See you at 10:45. Or, Jenna knocked on my door. "Devin, you okay? You were making these awful sounds." Yeah, I'm fine. Just nightmares." I sat up, my head pounding. What happened with the scratching? Weirdest thing. It went on until sunrise, then just stopped, like someone flipped a switch. She opened my door and studied me with concern. "You look terrible. This new job, are you sure it's worth it?" "Honestly, I have no idea." I checked my phone. 6 hours until my next shift. 6 hours to decide if I was really going to do this. "Did you see anything? Hear anything besides the scratching?" "No. But Devin, I've been thinking. Maybe we should call the landlord. Get someone to check the walls for rats or something. Because I swear, just before sunrise, I heard. I don't know how to explain it. I heard children singing. Really faint, like it was coming from far away. Some creepy nursery rhyme." She shuddered. "I know it sounds crazy." "It doesn't sound crazy," I said quietly, thinking of aisle 7 and the cold breath on the back of my neck. "Not crazy at all." The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze. I showered, ate, tried to watch TV, but my mind kept drifting back to Patterson's, to the rules, to the entities, to Roland's story about making a deal to save his daughter. By 9 p.m., I made my decision. I was going back, not because I was brave, not because I wanted to, but because something in me had changed during those 8 hours. I'd touched something vast and incomprehensible, and it had touched me back. The normal world no longer fit quite right, like a shirt I'd outgrown. Patterson's, terrifying as it was, made a terrible kind of sense. At 10:30 p.m., I put on my uniform and headed for my car. Jenna watched me go with worried eyes, but didn't try to stop me. What could she say? How could she understand? The drive to Patterson's took 15 minutes, and with every mile, I felt the change starting. The air grew heavier. The street lights seemed dimmer. The other cars on the road became less frequent until I was driving alone through the darkness. The parking lot was empty except for Roland's ancient Honda. The store's lights were on, but from the outside, it looked deserted, abandoned, like a place where time had stopped and nothing living remained. I sat in my car for a moment, gathering courage. Then I saw movement in the store's windows. A figure in a long gray coat, standing just inside the glass, looking out at me. Not threatening, just watching, waiting. I realized with a start that it had been waiting for me. Knew I would come back. Had perhaps always known. Taking a deep breath, I got out of my car and walked toward the employee entrance. The door opened before I could touch it, and Roland stood there with a tired smile. "Knew you'd show up. You got that look, the one they all get when they decide to stay. The look that says you've seen something you can't unsee, and now you need to understand it. He stepped aside to let me in. "Welcome to your second night, Devin. It only gets stranger from here." As I walked through the door, I felt it, a subtle shift, like crossing a threshold into another country. The hum started immediately, that constant vibration underlying everything. The air smelled of copper and old pennies. The fluorescent lights flickered their irregular welcome. Patterson's grocery was awake, and it recognized me. Roland handed me the laminated rules again. "Tonight, we're going to start teaching you the advanced protocols. How to handle multiple entities at once. What to do if the doors open more than 3 times. How to identify which customers are human and which ones aren't." He paused, and "I'm going to tell you about the other stores." Other stores. Patterson's isn't unique. There are places like this all over the country. All over the world, probably. Liminal spaces where reality gets thin. Some are grocery stores. Others are gas stations, laundromats, libraries, office buildings. Anywhere people pass through without really seeing. Anywhere the boundary between worlds wears thin from constant crossing. He led me toward the sales floor. There's a network, a community of people who work these places. We help each other, share information, warn each other when something particularly dangerous starts manifesting. Why doesn't anyone know about this? Why isn't this studied? Investigated? Oh, people know. Government knows. There are agencies that track liminal spaces, try to contain them or weaponize them. But the general public? They don't want to know. Can't handle knowing. So the knowledge stays with us, the night shifters, the threshold guardians, the ones who've been marked. He checked his watch. 11 o'clock. Time to lock the doors and start the real work. As Roland went through the ritual of closing, I looked around Patterson's with new eyes. This wasn't just a haunted grocery store. It was a battlefield, a border crossing, a place where human will and inhuman hunger met and fought for territory every single night. And I had just enlisted for duty. The night ahead stretched out before me, full of whispers and shadows and things that wore human shapes without human souls. But I was ready as anyone could be, because I understood now what Roland had been trying to tell me. Patterson's didn't just attract the lost and the dead. It also attracted the people who refused to look away, who saw the darkness and chose to stand in it anyway, who understood that someone had to hold a line between what was real and what should never be real. We were the 7, the survivors, the guardians of a threshold most people never knew existed. And despite everything, the fear, the nightmares, the psychological toll, there was a strange comfort in that, in knowing my place in something bigger, in understanding that the universe was vast and strange and terrible, but not incomprehensible. Not if you were willing to learn its rules. The door chimed. Midnight had arrived, and with it, Patterson's grocery transformed once again into the hunting ground, the way station, the thin place where worlds collided. I took a deep breath, checked that the rules were still under the counter, and stepped out onto the sales floor. Whatever came through those doors tonight, I would face it. Whatever whispered my name from the darkness, I would ignore it. Whatever tested me, I would endure it. Because I was night shift now, I was one of the ones who stayed. And in this place where reality bent and broke and reformed into impossible shapes, that meant something. It meant I was home. In the distance, I heard the first whispers starting in aisle 7. The children were waking up. Soon Dolores would arrive with her sleepwalking shuffle. Gregory would contemplate the philosophical implications of soup. The shadow shopper might materialize between one breath and the next. And somewhere in the store, patient and eternal, the gray coat would begin its rounds. But tonight, I wasn't afraid. Tonight, I was ready. Tonight, I belonged to Patterson's. And Patterson's belonged to me. The fluorescent lights flickered overhead, and in their irregular pulse, I could have sworn I heard a sound like laughter, not threatening, but almost approving, as if the store itself was welcoming me into its twisted embrace. Roland appeared at my side, 2 cups of coffee in his hands. He offered me one. To survival, he said, raising his cup in a mock toast. To understanding, I countered, clinking my paper cup against his. We drank our terrible coffee and watched the shadows gather in the corners, waiting for the night's first customers to arrive. And in that moment, standing in a grocery store that existed half in our world and half in someplace else entirely, I felt something unexpected. I felt like I'd finally found my purpose. The psychological toll Roland had warned me about would come later. The isolation, the inability to share what I knew with anyone outside this world, the slow erosion of what most people called normal. All of that was waiting for me down the road. But right now, in this moment, I was exactly where I needed to be. The door chimed. Someone, or something, was entering. My second night at Patterson's had begun, and I was ready for whatever came through those doors. Because I'd learned the most important rule of all, the one that wasn't written on any laminated card. Survival isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and showing up anyway. It's about looking at the darkness and refusing to blink. It's about standing in the threshold and holding the line, night after night, against things that shouldn't exist but do. Welcome to the graveyard shift. Welcome to the truth behind the fluorescent lights. Welcome to Patterson's Grocery, where every night is a battle for reality itself. And welcome to the rest of your strange, terrifying, extraordinary life.